Hi everyone, welcome to Making Things with String. My name is Kate, my pronouns are she, her. This is my crafty YouTube channel where I chat all about my crafty endeavors, including a lot of cross stitch and some knitting. Sometimes other things, but today those are the main topics of conversation. So thank you for being here. I appreciate you, whether you're an existing subscriber, whether you've just found my channel. Welcome. So today is March 2nd, and this is my 18th Flosstube video. I made my last video at the very beginning of February, so this is going to be a summary of all of my crafting throughout February. I thought I would set up the video and go through my progress with respect to the goals that I had for February. And so we'll start with cross stitch and then move on to a knitting update, an exciting knitting update at the end as well. So my goals for cross stitching for February, first we will start with a monthly goal that I will have every month this year, and that is to work on Needs No Paint, which is a chart that I am stitching by Heaven and Earth Designs. The artist is Jill Clare, and this is a piece that I'm trying to put 4,500 stitches in every month this year in order to finish it by the end of the year. So I think I should have some photos or video of what it looked like at the beginning of February or last time that you saw this piece. And I will give you a look at what it is looking like now. So this is Needs No Paint. And here is where I am so far. So currently I'm working down here, kind of working through these columns from right to left. And yeah, still just really loving how this watercolor effect is coming out. This project is being stitched on a 28 count even weave of some kind. And I'm using the called for DMC from the Heaven and Earth Designs chart. And I'm stitching with 2 strands of thread over 1 fabric thread, and I'm using tent stitches or half stitches. Try and bring that up a little so you can get a better look at these teeny tiny tent stitches. And there she is. Let's get some stats going here. All right, so last time you saw this, I was at 39.4% complete, or 33,031 stitches complete. Currently, I am at 44.91% complete and have stitched 37,636 stitches. A couple of these stitches, or a few of these stitches, were actually stitched yesterday, so they will count towards the March totals. Right, so in total, I stitched 4,519 stitches on this piece in February. And let's see, that was a total of 14 stitching days. Yeah. So that is my progress on Needs No Paint for February. I finished that stitching on about the 15th of February. So it took me about half of the month to get my goal stitching done on this piece. So coming along, and I'm excited to have it back out again and to start stitching on it. I'm liking the sort of rotation that I'm doing right now because we'll talk about a project that I started later on in the video. And yesterday I was kind of working on it and feeling a little bit ready to move on to something else. So you know, the way that my stitching is working is that I am able to focus on a piece for a pretty good amount of time and get a lot of good progress done on it in the month. But then, you know, once I'm starting to get tired of it, I finish my goal and I can move on to something else. So that's working out really well for me. All right, so next up, let's talk about WIPGO. So I am participating in WIPGO. If you don't know what WIPGO is, I'll link to Jessie Marie Does Stuff's video about WIPGO so you can learn more about it. The gist is every month there are 2 numbers called on my WIPGO board, and I have associated projects or goals or goals to each of those squares on my WIPGO board. And so every month there's sort of 2 goals that I have to work on. So for February, the numbers that were drawn were number 3, which for me was honeypot. If you watch my last video, you'll see that I finished that one already. So I kind of already had that square finished. And then the other thing that was called was to stitch half of the ornament Season's Greetings by Teresa Kogut. So get the information about that pattern for you. So yeah, like I said, it's called Season's Greetings. It's by Teresa Kogut. This is a Christmas ornament that was part of the Jingle Ball Baubles 2023 book. And yeah, since I have not started it until this video, you haven't seen it before. I don't have a before picture, but here is what it looks like. So my overhead camera, the color is not like super great, but let's try bringing it up a little closer. There we go. So I have stitched the top half of this ornament. And completed that WIPGO goal. So yeah, that's what it looks like. Let me give you a little bit of, I'll set this back down here and give you a little bit of information about this chart. So I am stitching this on a piece of 32 count affogato linen from Fiber on a Whim. So for the thread, the chart calls for a bunch of classic colorworks, some beautiful classic colorworks pieces of thread, but I don't have classic colorworks. So I did a DMC conversion. I've just got my little floss card here, which I will show you in case you're interested in the colors that I chose. I based it on the called for colors though, so tried to find the closest DMC colors that I could. So I am using some DMC for this, and on this 32 count fabric I am stitching with 2 strands of floss over 2 fabric threads. And that is Season's Greeting. So I finished that first half of the ornament, and I'll pick up the second half the next time that it gets called in WIPGO, or whenever I feel like it. In the past, once I've started too many ornaments, I get a little like uncomfortable and start finishing the ornaments that I started already. So we'll see if that continues into this year or not. So yeah, that is Season's Greetings by Teresa Kogut. It's really cute. Really cute so far. I haven't stitched a lot of houses, which is a really popular kind of motif in a lot of cross stitch, and I can see why people like stitching houses. They're very cute and fun to stitch and kind of easy. So it's like a little bit mindless, like stitching row after row. So it's like kind of easy to do, but it's also not completely mindless, like full one color all the time. Like there's the windows and there's the roof and there's a lot of like things to shake it up. So really great. And I love these little the greenery. It's just a very cute pattern. Teresa Kogut is a really great cross stitch designer. I haven't stitched anything from her before, so this is my first Teresa Kogut. It's really cute. I love it quite a lot. Excited to get back to it. So those are my 2 WIPGO calls for February, right? Honeypot and Season's Greetings. But I had an incomplete goal from January, which was to stitch for 5 days on my Twilight Imperium for Nebula. I have an update about the TI4 Nebula. Get ready. I think if you've been watching my videos for a long time, maybe you have gathered that I don't stitch on that piece very much. I'm not super motivated to work on it. And there's kind of two reasons for that. One is that it is being stitched on some black Aida. Let me get it and I'll show you while I'm talking. Okay, so here's where we are. Don't mind the cat hair. Here's where we are on my TI4 Nebula. Let's see, how many days have I stitched on TI4 Nebula? Yeah, I got 3 days since the beginning of 2024 on this piece. And my goal was to do 5, so I was almost there. But I got this out in February to try and finish that goal, that WIPGO goal. And I just really wasn't feeling it. And part of it is because it's being stitched on this 18 count black Aida, and it is harder to stitch on dark fabrics. It has to be done kind of during the day for me, and I have to make sure that there's something bright white underneath the fabric so that I can see the holes. If you've stitched on dark fabric, you probably know what I'm talking about. So it was a little bit harder to stitch than my other projects. And in addition to that, I've mentioned this a few times. I feel like the pattern is coming out looking a little bit streaky, like there's these vertical lines coming through. So this is a pattern that I created myself using pixelstitch.net. I uploaded an image of the Twilight Imperium 4 board game tile, the Nebula, into Pixel Stitch and generated the pattern that way. What I'm thinking is the image that I used was not a very good image. Like, it was sort of a low resolution image. So I did some searching and I found some better photos, some higher resolution photos of these anomaly tiles from the Twilight Imperium 4 board game. So I decided to have another go and try recreating these patterns. What I decided to do is I used higher resolution photos, and I also decreased the size of these patterns because I would like to stitch, I think it's 4 different anomalies. I want to stitch this nebula, I want to stitch an asteroid field, a gravity rift, and a supernova. And it's just, it's been taking me forever with this. So I decided if I'm going to do this, I should try a smaller chart. So higher resolution image, smaller chart, so that it's going to be, the piece will end up being smaller overall. And then what I did is I also wanted to address the fact that I wasn't enjoying stitching on the black Aida. So I had some navy Aida, and I decided to try bleaching it a little bit to create some like dynamic effect in the fabric. And that way when I frame the piece, because I imagine myself framing these in hoops, so there will be some of the fabric showing around the edge. So yeah, I decided to start this over again, essentially. I didn't want to just restart the Nebula again because I've already been working on the Nebula. I've got this progress done already, and so I figured if these adjustments that I've made didn't really work, then I would just have 2 half-finished Nebulas. So instead, I started the asteroid field. I'll show you a picture here of what the asteroid field looks like. And I will show you now what I got done. Okay, so here it is so far. This represents 526 stitches, or a total progress of 7.9% on this pattern. And There's a total of around, well, exactly 6,635 stitches in this piece. So yeah, that's how it's going. This is DMC thread. It is an 18 count navy Aida that I sprayed with bleach that I put into a spray bottle. And so yeah, you can see the kind of bleached variegation that added into the fabric. And I have been enjoying stitching this, and I'm interested to see how it turns out. Let's give you a bit of a closer look. The colors are a lot more vibrant than in, sorry about my adjusting here, it's hard to figure out which way to move, than in my asteroid pattern. But yeah, so you can see a little asteroid forming here. This needle minder I got, it's actually a magnet, like a fridge magnet, from Parc National de la Gaspésie in Quebec, in Canada. I was camping there this summer, and I just kind of turned it into a needle minder by putting another magnet on the back of it. So yes, I have worked on this piece. So I basically, what I've done is I've replaced that WIPGO call for the Nebula with this asteroid field. And I've now worked on this for 3 days. So I managed to get that 526 stitches done over the course of 3 stitching days. And now I just need 2 more stitching sessions to meet the WIPGO goal for this. So yeah, looking forward to get back into this one. Like I said, I only stitched on it for about 3 days at the beginning of the month, and then I had other goals that I moved on to. So yeah, that is my TI4 asteroid field, and that'll be the new TI4 tile that I am working on instead of the Nebula. So that is the saga. That is the saga of the Twilight Imperium 4 charts. Hopefully I like these better, and I think that they will stitch up a little faster, which I will like to. And yeah, we'll see how that turns out. So the WIPGO calls for March were number 1, which I've already completed. That was 5 days of stitching on a stitching shelf. So I completed that, I think, actually in January. So I'm not going to continue and do that again. I'm going to call that finished. And then another thing that was called was number 10, which for me is Gingerbread House 1. So I'll put a picture up here of what that will look like. So Gingerbread House 2 was one that I stitched last year, and I'll be stitching the number 1 gingerbread house this year. I believe it's Country Cottage Needleworks that the pattern is by. And so we will stitch half of that here in March. And then, especially because the other WIPGO call for this month was already completed, that stitching shelf, I will finish up the WIPGO call for the asteroid field as well this month. So the next monthly goal that I have every month for this year is to participate in Stitch for Pride, hashtag Stitch for Pride, which is a year-long event put on by Dee at Dee's 20 Stitches. And so the idea here for this year, for this iteration of Stitch for Pride, is that every month there will be a small pattern released that is inspired by an artist from the 2S LGBTQIA plus community. And that little pattern is accompanied by some resources and information so that we can all kind of spend some time learning a little bit more about these artists. And, you know, while we're sort of stitching on the little design that's related to them, learning about them and their work. So I'm really, really enjoying this so far. I don't think I've shown either of these I can't remember if I did show the January one. If I showed some progress on that last video, I will put that in here, but I don't think I had received my fabric yet. I was waiting for my fabric. So I stitched both the January and the February charts this month in February. Here is what they look like. So this chart here is the January chart. So the January artist was Keith Haring, and yeah, this is what the little chart inspired by his art looks like. And then over here on the right we have the February chart. This artist is Kahinda Wiley, who you might, I mean, both of these artists, I definitely recognized their work once I saw, like I didn't know by their names necessarily, but once I've seen their art, I definitely recognized it. And Kahinda Wiley actually did Barack Obama's presidential portrait, so many of you might be familiar with that portrait. But I have seen some of his other work as well. Yeah, so these are both really, really fun little motifs. As you can see, I'm stitching them all individually. Dee has released instructions for how to stitch them all together as a spot sampler, but I thought that it would be nice to have them each on their own individual little piece of fabric and swap them out month to month as like a kind of calendar for me in my office. So I'll kind of keep track of January, February, March, etc. and just swap them out as the months go by in future years. So they're not fully finished yet, so I'm not displaying them quite yet, but next year I will be able to. So let me give you a little bit of information about these charts. So let's start with the January chart, the one that represents Keith Haring. Like I said, pattern's always by D20. The fabric that I'm using here is a 36 count throwback linen, which is from the sewing shop. This is my first time ordering from the sewing shop, and I really, really love the linen. It's nice and soft, and this color isn't necessarily showing up super well on the camera, but it's a very sort of vibrant, like neon yellowy green color. And so yeah, I thought that, you know, some of the artists might look good on this fabric. So I put Keith Haring on there. The thread I'm using for this one is the called for DMC. The DMC is 796, that sort of navy blue. And then Kahinda Wiley's piece, the February piece, is stitched on another 36 count linen from the sewing shop. This one's called Avocado Toast. And I didn't use the called for DMC for this one, so I actually used DMC 3346 instead. I just kind of liked that green a little bit better than what was called for. So yeah, those are my January and February Stitch for Pride pieces. I love them. Hopefully next month, at least one of them will be finished. What I'm thinking about doing is a drawn thread hem or a hem stitch to finish these off. I've never tried that before, but I was watching Cardamom Pins and was inspired by her to try to learn how to do that. So we'll see how that goes. Hopefully you'll see that next month. So the next thing that I had as a goal for the month was to participate in the Hello Dimensions SAL, which is a SAL being hosted by Hello from Liz Matthews. The official SAL is to stitch a Dimensions Gold Petites collection chart called Coffee Shop, I believe. I am not stitching Coffee Shop. I am stitching the Toy Shop, which is a chart that a kit that I already had purchased. So I'm trying to follow along as best I can with this chart instead of the Coffee Shop chart that they are all stitching. I can't remember if I had any progress on this in my last video or not, so if I did, I will put some visual here of where I was. But now I am at this point right here. So you can see that the first section that I did was these 3 windows to try and match up with what Liz had suggested for the first part of the stitch along, and I'm also working on outlining all of the windows over here, which I'm making some pretty good progress on. And then I'm also stitching on the door. Our door is a blue door, not a red door like in the coffee shop, but yeah, I'm trying to stitch that whole door. So this is how it's looking. It's really kind of dark looking on camera. But this Dimensions project has been really cool so far. I've never stitched a Dimensions kit. And so the thing that's a little bit different about Dimensions compared to other kind of stitching is that there is some sort of 2/2 cross stitching going on, like in this door here and in some of these stitches around the windows. But there's also a lot of variability in the number of threads that you're supposed to use and the type of stitch that you're supposed to do. For example, these little green stitches here are these little green stitches are just tent stitches, they're half stitches. And same in the windows, it's half stitches. Sometimes it's 3 strands of thread, sometimes it's 4 strands of thread. But it creates a really interesting dynamic or dimension in the final stitch piece. So that's been really cool to try. Sometimes it's a little bit tricky stitching with 3 or 4 threads on this, what I believe is an 18 count Aida. But yeah, I just plug away. I'm doing it as called for. I've heard some people, like Nikki from Nick's Days, mentioned that she doesn't do the 3 or 4 strands, she just does 2 strands. So I'm sure like that ends up looking beautiful as well. But I'm going ahead and doing it how it's called for in the chart this time. And everything here is just what's called for. So I'm using the needle that came with the kit. I'm using the fabric and the floss as well that came with the kit. So this is really fun. It's been a good, like fairly portable piece. So I've taken it with me to work a couple times, and I've taken it downstairs with me to stitch while I'm watching TV with my husband. So yeah, really enjoying this little SAL, and I'm hoping to be able to keep up with it. It's, yeah, because I'm doing a different chart than what Liz is stitching, it's a little bit hard to tell if I am on track or not, but I'm stitching on it when I can, and it's been really fun so far. So once I was finished my monthly stitching on Needs No Paint, I put that full coverage away, and I decided to pull out my mini African Mammals pattern. So this is another Heaven and Earth Designs full coverage chart, charted by Heaven and Earth Designs, and the art is by Cyril Marchetti. And this is a mini, so it's a little bit smaller than some of the gigantic versions of the piece. I'll show you some footage or an image of where I was the last time that you saw this piece. And here is what it's looking like now. So I've made a little bit of progress. Let's see if I can give you some idea of exactly how much. So last time that you saw this, I was at 2% complete, and I had stitched 1,503 stitches, I believe my notes say. Let's check here if that makes sense. In the last video, I had done 1,503 stitches. I have actually stitched on it. I stitched on it a little bit after the last video in January as well. In February, I did 397 stitches over 2 stitching days. I stitched on this on February 16th and February 19th. And yeah, February 16th would have been Brenda's birthday. If you're new, I am stitching this piece in memory of my mother-in-law who passed away at the end of January. So right now in total, I'm 3.3% complete, and there's 2,485 stitches on this WIP. I am stitching this on a 25 count Easy Grid Lugana fabric using the called for DMC, and it's pretty exciting. There's a giraffe head coming into shape here, and there's another sort of antelope type of animal that will be coming out right here. And yeah, here's what it's looking like. So I'm hoping to get a little bit of work on this done every month. We'll see how much I manage. This month it wasn't a whole ton, but yeah, I think it's coming along great. I like that this chart has stuff kind of all over it. So even though I'm, very near the beginning of the chart, I'm starting to see interesting things take shape. So that's been really fun. Yeah, so stitching this again, 2 strands of DMC thread over 1 fabric thread, and I'm using tent stitch or half stitches to stitch this one as well. All right, the next piece that I worked on this month was the 1/2 of the 2 Quaker Sisters sampler by Modern Folk Embroidery. I have finished one of these 2 sister samplers, and I started the other one on New Year's Eve, 2024 New Year's Eve. But I decided to stitch on this piece this month on Valentine's Day because it is my most Valentine's Day-y pattern, because it's all lovey-dovey and about love stuff. So the quote in the middle of this particular sister sampler says, "Whoso findeth me findeth love." And the other one says, "For I am thine and thou art mine." So I'll put some footage here of where this piece was when you last saw it. This would have just been pretty much the start that I made on it on New Year's Eve 12 by 12. And here is what it is looking like right now. So this progress is what I did on Valentine's Day. So I stitched on this a little bit while I was hanging out with my husband, Neil. So this piece is being stitched on a 32 count linen from Roxy Floss Co. Called In the Shade. And I am using also some Roxy Floss flosses to stitch this. So I'm using Kernel Mustard and Butterscotch, I believe, are the 2 colors. And I am stitching this with 2 strands of floss over 2 fabric threads. And yeah, this just represents sort of that one day of stitching. I pulled it out on Valentine's Day and stitched on it a little bit then as my version of celebrating Valentine's Day, which isn't a holiday that we typically celebrate a whole lot. We try to celebrate our love throughout the year, and not focus too much on pressuring one another to purchase things for each other. So that's sort of our personal preference there. We like to spend money on things, but typically those are like experiences or food, and yeah, sometimes gifts, like we give each other gifts for birthdays and Christmas and such, but yeah, typically not on Valentine's Day. But this is like a beautiful Quaker pattern, and the fabric and floss are both really nice. Come on. There we go. Really pretty. So hopefully this will come out again soon. It is on my WIPGO board to come out at some point, so we'll see it again this year for sure. And I might actually use it for a sampler September, because it is one of the few samplers that I have. So next up, I've got a finish for you. So the pattern is called Birds in Winter. This is another Modern Folk Embroidery pattern. This was actually a freebie that Jacob released, I think just after the New Year or just after Christmas. So I downloaded that and I have stitched it up. Here is what it looks like. So it is not yet fully finished, but I have finished the stitching. There's actually a little border around the outside on the pattern, that is like a square border, but I think I'm going to finish this in the round, so I left that border off for now. And yeah, here it is, all done. So cute. This fabric is a 32 count affogato linen from Fiber on a Whim. And I was using 3 of Hearts floss from Forbidden Fiber Co. mixed with some DMC and anchor threads that were similar to it in color, so that I could make sure that I had enough to finish this piece, because I didn't quite have enough. I just had 1 skein of that 3 of Hearts from Forbidden Fiber Co. So yes, it's stitched with 2 strands of thread over 2 fabric threads. And in February I stitched on this 4 times in order to finish it off. So yeah, that was a total of 8 stitching days to finish this. So from start to finish, 8 total stitching days, which is not bad. Yeah, it's like a nice small. I'm planning to finish this up as a smalls exchange piece for Stitch North. So yeah, hopefully you will see that fully finished piece pretty soon, because Stitch North is actually coming up pretty soon. It's like next month. So very much looking forward to that, and really like this little piece. Maybe I'll stitch it again for myself to keep at some point, just because it's a nice quick little stitch. But Birds in Winter by Modern Folk Embroidery, all done. All right, so those are pretty much all of the goals that I had going into February, stuff that I knew that I was going to start, or that I knew that I was going to want to do. But I stitched on a couple other things throughout the month. First up, I made a little bit of progress on my black butterfly sampler by Shaded Stitchery. So this is a pattern that I kind of bring with me to work. It's a good travel piece as well, and so I just kind of had a day where I did that. Maybe it was more than one day. Let's double check here. Black butterfly. Yeah, I just worked on it one day on February 6th. So here's what it looked like last time that you saw it. And yeah, it's just stitched on it for one day, so it's not like a whole lot different. However, I did do the back stitches in this bottom butterfly. It's now complete. So the butterflies are all done, which is really exciting. And I started filling in the back stitching along the border. And yeah, I'm gonna kind of continue working down that way. And there will be some little flowers under here, and then an alphabet over to the right. So yeah, this is a beautiful piece that I really love stitching on. I am stitching this on a 25 count Lugana. It's called Wise Wolf. I'm not sure who the dyer is. And I'm using 2 flosses for this. I'm using Karen Waterlily's Dark Shadows. That's the majority of what you see here. A nice variegated silk thread. And then I'm also using the Gentle Art Blackboard in this piece. Currently, this little crown is the only thing that's stitched in Blackboard, but we are going to quickly be moving forward with a lot of Blackboard from here on out, because really it's like the butterflies and the outline that are mostly in Karen Waterlilies, and the rest of the chart will be Blackboard. So that's my progress on Black Butterfly. It's a beautiful piece. So the last cross stitch piece that I want to talk about is a start that I wasn't necessarily planning to make, but I mentioned in my last video that I bought some Heaven and Earth Design dragon charts with the Year of the Dragon SAL in mind. And I was chatting with my friend Judith, who is X-Stitching Librarian on Instagram. Judith has been watching my videos for a long time, and you know, always comments on them, and we sort of have become friends and started chit-chatting over on Instagram as well. And, you know, she was curious about, we had a kind of a Zoom chat, and she was curious about the patterns that I had purchased because I kind of forgot to show them at the end of my last video. So maybe I'll show them here. The charts that I purchased, none of these charts are the ones that I started, by the way, of course. So where are we? Okay, so I ordered 4 dragon charts. They are all Heaven and Earth designs, and the artist is Kayomi Harai. So I ordered the mini blue dragon, the mini white dragon, the mini red dragon, and the mini golden dragon. But on top of that, on Valentine's Day, on the Heaven and Earth Designs Facebook page, a free chart was distributed. It was called Venus, and I downloaded that, and Judith also got it. So we decided that we would start a full coverage dragon together as part of the Year of the Dragon SAL, and I also have hashtag Leap Year Dragon SAL. Stitching by the Shore is also stitching this Venus Heaven and Earth Designs chart, and she may have changed the hashtag that she's using. I'm not sure, because in her most recent video she didn't use Leap Day Dragon SAL, she used something else. But anyways, we decided to start this together. It's sort of meant to be a leap year SAL, so the idea is that we will try to finish this this chart before the next leap year, so within 4 years' time. I wasn't sure whether I wanted to stitch Venus along with Judith, or because Judith was going to stitch the Venus chart, or if I wanted to stitch the mini blue dragon. I put a poll up on my Instagram page, and the vast majority of people picked Venus, so I did choose that one. So I started the Valentine's Day 2024 freebie chart Venus. It's a Heaven and Earth design, and the designer is Michelle Sayeta. And this chart was designed using AI and Photoshop. So I've got a picture of it here, and before I show you my progress on it, I do just want to take a second to talk a little bit about the fact that this chart was designed by AI and Photoshop, kind of what that means a little bit, what my viewpoints are on it. A lot of people are talking about this right now. I've seen several Flosstubers mention it. I know that Crafting Gaming Jamie did a really good summary video, and she referred to another video that she's watched that goes really deep into kind of what generative AI is and how it works and what the concerns are about it. So if you're interested in that, check out that video. But Jen's Fiberweb has also talked about her perspective on AI, and Cam from Cam the Stitcher also recently talked about AI in her most recent Flosstube video. So this is something that some people are concerned about, and there are good reasons for this. So the long and short of it is that generative AI does what it does because it has a vast database of data that it scrapes from the internet. And in the case of creating art, it is using the art that exists and is available on the internet, images that are available on the internet. It's using that to inform its own sort of artistic renderings. And therefore, the works that you're getting from an AI image generator are derivative of other artists, number one. That's not necessarily the bad part, because you might argue that all art is derivative, right? Like actual artists get inspired by other artists and that informs their own work. I think that's like a fairly natural part of the artistic process, is being influenced by other things that you experience and see, including other art. But one of the things that is concerning is that the artists whose art is informing the AI output did not consent to have their art being used in this way, and they're not being compensated for it. So there's some questionable, concerns around whether it's like valid or should be allowed for somebody to charge and make money off of something that was generated by an AI that is using other people's work and not compensating them for it. I think that's totally a valid concern. My hope is that in the future there will be regulations that come about that make it so that you won't be able to sell an AI generated product if that piece was created without consent from the artists whose data makes up the database of the AI, and then hopefully compensation to those artists so they get some kind of a cut of the work that's being produced through that AI tool, if that makes sense. So a lot of people are, avoiding stitching AI charts altogether. Some people are choosing not to purchase anymore from companies that are including AI charts in their stock. My personal decision around this is that I will not pay money for an AI chart. But as you can see, I have decided to stitch this one that I got for free. It's beautiful. And there is some art involved in the creation of this. So Michelle, I messaged a little bit with Michelle on Facebook to ask her about her process. And so the image is generated with AI, but she does some work in Photoshop to clean it up. And so yeah, there's some work involved in it still. It's not completely automated. But yes, there are concerns around it. I encourage you to inform yourself about AI and how it is being used in cross-stitch. I think companies should be very clear about when a chart is AI and when it isn't. Heaven and Earth Designs is pretty good at doing that, although in the PDF for Venus, it doesn't really specifically say anywhere that it was AI generated. Heaven and Earth Designs is posting that as part of the details when they're posting on social media. They're saying that it was AI in Photoshop. So maybe a little bit of work could be done there, but I think generally that's going to be what's important, is saying whether it's AI or not, and if it's not, attributing the artist, which they do always do for Heaven and Earth Designs in particular. And then, making your own decision about whether that's something that you want to support financially or not. And if you don't want to support it financially, whether you're comfortable supporting it at all in the first place. So you might choose not to stitch any charts that are AI. But yeah, you might make a different decision. And as long as you're kind of thinking about it and informing yourself about why there's a bit of controversy, and then making your decision based on that, I think that's just all we need to do. And again, like, AI is very new, and I think / hope that regulations will catch up eventually, and that eventually there will be sort of clear rules around when you can use AI and when you're allowed to sell something that you created with AI. All right, would you like to see my stitching? Here is where I've gotten so far on Venus. So I am stitching this on a 28 count easy grid fabric, using the DMC called for in the Heaven and Earth Designs chart. I am stitching it 2 threads over 1 tent stitch, as I do for most of my full coverage pieces. So let's take a look here at how much I've got done. I started this on February 25th. All right, so I have stitched so far 1.2% of this chart. I have stitched 1,905 stitches across the 6 days that I have stitched it. And yeah, I'm putting this away now until I'm done for the month with my Needs No Paint. And I'll also probably stitch a little bit on mini African mammals after I have worked on Needs No Paint before I pick this one back up again. But yeah, I'm really loving this. The colors are really beautiful. It's sort of these light golds, and tealy colors, which are really pretty. It's sort of a very pretty light palette. Enjoying it a lot so far. All right, feel free to leave me a comment if you have any thoughts about the whole AI thing. I'm interested in discussing that and what people are thinking about that. But yeah, that is Venus. Okay, that's it for my cross stitch progress for February. I want to talk a little bit about knitting, and I want to talk about something exciting that I've decided to start participating in. So I was watching Jen's Fiber Web, I guess over a month ago now, and she was talking about Sock Madness on Ravelry, which is kind of a sock knitting competition that you can join. They do it every year, and she's taking part and, you know, encouraged everybody to take part as well. So I thought I would give it a go. So the way that Sock Madness works, I guess it's based on like sort of March Madness basketball stuff that happens in the States. I am not very familiar with that process at all. But we had to sign up before February 14th, I believe, in order to take part in the event. And if you did that, the qualifying round started on, I think, the 15th of February and lasted for 2 weeks. They released a sock pattern that you needed to try and knit in that 2-week period in order to qualify and be placed on a team. So the pattern that they released was called Hydra Scales. Here it is. It's by Wyvern Knits. Really cool sock pattern. And if you've been watching my channel for a long time, you'll see that sometimes I knit some interesting socks, but mostly when I knit socks, I knit just sort of vanilla stockinette socks, or I do like the Hermione's Everyday Sock, which is not stockinette, but it's the same repeat over and over all the way through the sock. Fairly simple construction. So yeah, this was interesting. It has some in cables, a little bit of like an intarsia cable in the middle. And here is what I made. So I did finish 2 socks. There's some hairs on this. I have actually already worn this pair of socks because it fits me perfectly. So for the competition, there's certain minimum requirements that you need to knit. And so my approach to this was just going to be to knit whatever the minimum was, because it is a speed competition in the end. And so the notion is I will end up with a bunch of pairs of socks. Some of them will fit me like these, so I will keep them. Some of them will not. I will gift those socks to other people. But yeah, here is my qualifying pair of Sock Madness socks. I'm really, really happy with them. I used some stranded Dyeworks yarn that I had that I used to knit a tee with previously, so you may remember seeing that if you've seen my other videos. But the 2 colors are Industrial Kingfisher, and the navy blue is Deep Feelings. This little lighter blue yarn was just a yarn scrap that I had in my stash, so I do not know anything about that yarn, unfortunately. But yeah, here it is. This is an interesting sock. This heel construction I've never done before. I think it's sometimes called a strong heel. So you just sort of increase along here, along these rows. You like continue knitting, but you're increasing along the back of the foot. And then you do a heel turn and decrease. And you never have to pick up stitches with this type of heel. So that's really interesting. I like how it fits. One thing that's a little bit weird is if you do a contrast heel like this just ends up on the bottom of your foot. You don't see it on the back of the foot, which is a little bit different than most other types of heels that I've seen. And this toe is really interesting too. Most of the time with toes, you just do decreases along the sides, either side of the foot. but this one has decreases kind of all the way around so that it looks like a little spiral in the end. So yeah, those are my Hydroscale socks. Really, really cool. I was glad that I was able to finish them. I actually finished them in about 6 days, and we had 2 weeks, so that's pretty cool. I bought these sock blockers just for this, and they're actually a little bit small to be able to properly stretch out these socks, so I think I'm gonna actually have to make new ones for the future rounds, because the way that this works is you create a Ravelry project page for your projects, and then there's certain photographs that you need to take of your socks once they're done and send them in, like email a link to your project page to the moderator team. So you do, like, you know, they need to check that you've knit the socks correctly, and so they need to be stretched out, and it needs to be easily visible what you've done. So yeah, I may need to make some sock blockers to do that more easily. I don't like pinning. You can also pin out your socks and stretch them out that way, pin them onto a blocking mat, but that's kind of annoying to have to do. It's a lot harder than just slipping it onto a sock blocker. So yeah, we've already been assigned teams today, and we should be getting our first round sock pattern soon. I'm not sure exactly when, but you'll definitely be hearing about it next time. All right, so the last thing that I want to talk about in today's video is some Stitchy Kindness. I don't usually have like a haul or Stitchy Kindness section to my videos, but I was recently sent some pretty cool vintage cross-stitch pattern booklets from my grandmother-in-law, Neil's grandmother. So let me get them. So she used to cross stitch a lot, and she had a bunch of cross stitch stuff. Actually, in the summer, she also gave me a bunch of old Ada that she had, and a bunch of DMC floss that she had. But yeah, recently she found these 2 books that she sent me. So let's do like a little overhead view. Okay, first is this leaflet by Leisure Arts called Gertrude Again, by Frankie Buckley. Look at these geese. I've seen a lot of people talking about these retro geese on Flosstube lately, so that's sort of topical, I think. Lots of people are kind of loving the sort of 90s retro feel of these kinds of patterns. And so now I have a bunch of them, and this booklet here was released in 1989, so that's pretty cool. And then she also sent me another Leisure Arts leaflet called Earth Awakens, and it's a bunch of really beautiful and retro floral designs. Look at those. Look at these little hummingbirds. So cute. There's the one on the back. Oh my god, look at this. So yeah, those are really, really fun. And when she sent me those, I looked through the box of stuff that she had given me before, including all that Ada, to see if there was any other patterns that I wanted to show. And I remembered this kit that she had. So Needle Treasures Kit. I think this is called M.I. Hummel. Anyways, it's a cute little boy with a basket of cherries or apples and his little doggy. And it's got Ada and all of the floss and an amazing color organizer here too. So I think I'd like to try and stitch this someday. It's got some like pretty intricate back stitching involved. So cool. So yeah, I want to say thank you to Joyce for sending me those things. I really appreciate that. And yeah, it's fun to see sort of like these older pieces that she had. All right, well, that's about it for today. I think this is kind of a long video, but I've stitched a lot in February, so I had a lot of things to show you. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks again for sticking around, especially if you watched all the way through till now. And I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.